Hi, this is Steve Matley, president of Coast to Coast Equities, and this is Real Men in Real Estate. And while we are not going outside because right now we're on lockdown, we are complying with the social distancing order, the shelter-in-place order from the governor of California, because we are helping to do our part to help avoid the spread of this virus. Brian Fox and Tunde Ogunwole are joining me today, and we're going to talk to you from where we are in our homes, because life doesn't have to stop. It keeps moving on, even if you can't go outside and go very far and socialize. So guys, I want to start by talking about, what are we hearing out there? What is the chatter about right now with this whole situation?
Go for it, Tunde.
You know, one of the things that people have been sharing with me is that they're really concerned about how this is going to be a new normal, and they think that the economy is going to hit a significant downturn for an extended period of time. That seems to be kind of the theme in the discussions that I'm having. Small businesses are being hurt in ways that they haven't really been used to running into this coronavirus pandemic that we're in. So I think that's a lot of the chatter that I'm hearing, is that they think that things are going to go down for a significant amount of time. And I think this conversation that we're about to have is really kind of break that up and look at it in a different way, because there's a lot of opportunities when you have these corrections and interruption, etc.
Okay, Brian, what are you hearing out there?
You know, it's funny. Up until this moment, every fifth conversation I've had, and we talked about it in the show a ton, is the market's too high. It's got to crash at some point, right? Like this thing, like it's supposed to happen, and we have conversations. Every fifth person's like, "Hey, where's the market at?" And the response I told them, I said, when you look at each one of these places where the market crashed, it was by an outside resource. Real estate is much like a commodity. It's like gold and silver. It's something people trade and buy to establish equity and value in something that is a hard, tangible item that you can hold on to and say, okay, this is where my money went. And that money goes up over time. And so when money gets bad, other places, that will affect us potentially, but it depends on that thing. And so I said, nothing's going to happen unless something outside of the box happens. And look at this. We have some random virus that comes in and halts the economy, and they say, oh my gosh, it's supposed to go down by a ton of money. The reality is, the conversations I'm having with my clients, they've gotten a lot more educated as time went on. And so their concern is not so much when it will go down, how much it'll go down, as okay, what kind of a ride are we about to get on? They've kind of gotten the point that, and most of them have went through the crisis of September 11th. They went through the crisis of 2007. So they've seen it. So they just kind of want to know, what kind of ride are we in for? That's kind of the question they ask me.
Okay. You know, I'm hearing everything from this is temporary and it's not a big deal, to the sky is falling, to the, you know, this everything's going to crash and burn. I'm hearing everything in between. I'm hearing this is 2008 all over again. I'm hearing that real estate prices will drop like the stock market prices have dropped. I'm hearing that we're 2 weeks behind where Italy is. I'm hearing all these different things. At the same time, I'm hearing other people say, well, this is kind of a temporary thing, you know, that this will run its course. It's a 15-day shutdown for now. It could extend longer than that if it looks like the spread of this contamination isn't contained right away. But I think there's some key differences. So that's kind of what we're hearing out there. And I will say this, we have to understand a few things. You can go to the actual source of where information is, or you can rely on intermediaries like the news media, who will take information and disseminate it for you and pepper in their own hyperbole and opinions in there. And why would they do that? Is it just because they're mean and irresponsible? No. They live and die by getting people glued to the screen, because they are owned by entertainment companies who sell airtime. And I'm not saying that cynically, that's just their business model. They have got to have people tune in, and in a crisis, people want to tune in. That happened during the Gulf War, that happened during after 9/11, that happens, you know, over and over again. And right now we have another crisis, and people want to tune into the news, and so they lead off with numbers that seem very scary, but they tend to lack the context of those numbers and how they fit into other things. So having said that, first thing I would tell people is, if you want to know what's going on, go directly to the CDC website and find out what they're saying. You don't need someone to interpret it for you. You don't need someone to say things. Just listen to it. If you want to hear what your governor of your state says or what the president says, tune in and listen to that. Do not go to a news source and have them interpret it for you. They kind of add things and leave things out and put opinions, and go straight to the source and listen. And then you'll know information. So that's the first thing I would caution people on as they go through this, so that the panic has no place. Fear is the most primal emotion we have, and it's the most dangerous emotion we have. Now, it can save our lives. For example, don't get too near the cliff. Don't tease a hungry tiger, those kind of things. But it also tends to be the emotion that causes us to make our worst decisions.
But parlay into that, the idea of fight or flight. So this is kind of where this whole discussion is going, in my opinion, is what to expect from the market. There is going to be a segment of the market that will go down, but they'll talk about a national average. They won't talk about this neighborhood versus that neighborhood. And the reality is there is going to be significant opportunity, and that's going to be the fight. There's people who sell and like get rid of everything. I don't want to lose what I have, and that's going to be the flight. And there's going to be the system that happens where some people are going to offload what they have. The stock market is getting pummeled, but the reality is that's happening because people are fearing that they're going to lose dividends on their earnings in companies that aren't able to serve the consumer. So I know friends who are already laying off people. We've been 2 weeks into this, and they're cutting people loose. There are, I don't know what the number is. I don't want to quote it badly, but it was almost a 50% increase in unemployment numbers over the last 30 days.
Like, here's the crazy part, Brian. Yeah. Once they lay people off, they are now responsible to pay the unemployment claims on those people, and they just increased their cost.
Well, that too. So this is the things that people understand, is that in this fight or flight is that there are people who are absolutely shoving things off the board to say, no, I can't, I got to protect my wealth. And they should get lean on some things. But the other side of the spectrum is people who are looking at the opportunity to say, okay, great. Stocks are now at a 50% sell-off. How do I get in those? And those people are going to take all those dividends and turn them back into what? Commodities like real estate, gold, and silver. They're going to take them and put them in hard assets. And so this thing balances both ways. And before the call, this is something I did want to play with, is the idea of toilet paper only. Toilet paper is something that has now become a commodity. Like, people, they're buying 400 rolls. They've never needed more than 3 in their entire week. And now for some reason we think we're about to go out of business of it. And that's going to create a systemic pressure of that is now a commodity. It's a bubble in its own, and people are going to overproduce toilet paper as a corollary. Go ahead.
Yeah. And so here's my question on the toilet paper. Let's say it takes 20 sheets per incident per person. If you've got 40 cases of that, how many times do you have to do that per day before you run out of toilet paper? That's insane. And Tunde, I want to hear from you, because you work in a sector where you provide the facilities for the distribution of all these goods, and everybody's going to online ordering and fulfillment. That is what your company provides. So I'm thinking you guys are in for a boom.
Absolutely. So I really want to key off a couple of things. You talked about the fact, go where the information is, not where the emotion is. Go where the information is, right? And so as we look at real estate assets, whether it's a short-term phenomenon that we're going through, or a midterm phenomenon that we're going through, or a long-term phenomenon, look at the opportunities that exist. So you asked me the question about consumer product goods and distribution centers. For the last 3 to 5 years in our market here in Southern California, the logistics and fulfillment center has been a great boom. Most of the retailers are trying to e-tail. And if you can think of all the activities that are happening now, many of us are staying at home, spending time with family, working remotely. Most of our purchases are online, and there's always been a trend towards that over the last few years. That's only accelerated during this phenomenon. So you asked the question about logistics centers. The demand for logistics centers to feed those retail locations is even stronger now, because people's buying behavior is going to change. I'm just thinking about my own experience over the last couple of weeks, and I bought a mobile printer so that I can work remotely, so that I can be a little bit more adaptable. Think about your own buying behavior, whether it's toilet paper, whether it's food, whether it's other consumer product goods. What type of real estate play are you going to have in that? And the logistics fulfillment center is poised for a boom in all 3 scenarios: short-term, medium, and long-term.
But, people going to have new buying habits. So after this is over, I don't think we're going to see a return to the same number of people going into the brick and mortars even that we had, because new habits, people that were a little resistant of that are going to learn to buy things remotely, and they're also going to learn to work remotely. I think
I'll
the
see that.
commercial sector for office space might drop a little bit, but people want more room in their homes because they need to work from home and they need to learn how to do that. Brian,
And what you're really highlighting, Steve, and I think Brian, you're also touching on, is the fact that there are opportunities. You talked about the fight or flight. I'm an advocate, and I think all three of us are an advocate of the fight. Where is the opportunity in all of this? And we know that people are shifting their behaviors. They're connecting with people in different ways. If you can have a level mind and not really react to all the emotion and think about the opportunity, where are those opportunities in real estate? That's a better way of looking at this. Obviously, we need to respond to all the public health guidance and governance in terms of social distancing and washing our hands, et cetera. But also taking this time, instead of watching Netflix all day, educate yourself on what those opportunities are. In the case of retailing or e-tailing, very optimistic about what that demand will look like.
Well, and something I want to add is that it's very interesting. So we've talked over historically about the technology curve. They've talked about how the technology is doubling and tripling in its efficiency and its ability to accomplish things over time. And we have now caught up, in my opinion, to a place where technology has the ability to meet us head for head with any issue we find and figure out what the counterbalance is to that issue moving forward now. So as an example, we have hit this virus issue where everyone is now forced to stay at home, where they were happy to work remote before, but now they have to work remote. And by the way, you're not supposed to leave your house temporarily. And this 30-day problem is going to create a multitude of solutions that will now become standard. So I'll give you an example. Farmers markets, buying locally, may be a viable conclusion to having to wait for stuff to show up. Like they were having a big problem before, but they actually might now be part of the answer, is being able to send things like Ubers and Lyfts, and there's a company called Lug that will actually go and get stuff and pick it up and bring it to you. That might be a conclusion as a
Farm Fresh does the same thing. They actually have a subscription service where they deliver you a box of locally grown vegetables every single week.
So there's that, but then there's everything that's come after that. So there's that. There's also how we do real estate. One of the things I'm trying to think about now is how can I get in people's homes without having to get in their homes, right? It becomes this new economy of pretend we can't ever go to their house again. How are we supposed to get business done? Because
so Brian, why don't you build on that a little bit, because you really have an expertise in the residential sector.
Well, I'm going to hold off on that because I think that's a whole other conversation, and we're going to a little short on time. I want to keep these short and sweet. So I think Tunde, I think we want to visit that in a whole nother conversation because we can do a whole video on that. So let's keep that on tab. What I want to do quickly is wrap up with basic positive steps that people can do. I've already said lay off of the news media every day and go get direct information and then look at some positive things. I'm also going to say follow the CDC guidelines, wash your hands, try to avoid socializing with people if you can, only go out and do what you have to do. Don't do anything to spread things. You may be a carrier and not know it, and there are susceptible people out there you may cross paths with. Just be a good neighbor and be positive. So both you guys, I want to give you a chance to give your best positive step people can take right now.
Tunde, go for it.
For me, I think one of the things is to focus on education. Educate yourself about what happens in down cycles, whether they're short, long, or medium, and see those opportunities. So educate versus just be entertained while you're at home. This is an opportunity to not only learn and spend time with your kids to help their development, educate yourself. Obviously, a lot of us have had a long-term bias where you're buying stocks and you're waiting for appreciation. This is an opportunity to flip that. If you think certain stocks are going to go down in the short term, then you can short the stock. So look at the downside play that works to your advantage. And obviously be smart with your money. This is an opportunity where you want to be prudent with your cash. So talk to your financial advisor, review your finances, be smart before you invest, but see the opportunities. Those are the things that come to mind for me.
Ryan, what do you got?
So for me, I think that the best advice I could possibly give is anything that's news related is a trailing item, right? They are chasing the tail of something as opposed to being in front of it. And I think if you look into people like Gary Vaynerchuk and a lot of other significant people of investment, and they talk about, hey, this thing is going to have an issue coming up because The reality is it cannot sustain at this level. It doesn't matter what it is. If it kicks one leg out from the table is going over. And to be fair, it may not have been anything no one could have foreseen a virus as being the thing that did it, but that doesn't make it less true because it did happen. And so I think the idea that I would give people is to follow people who have a voice towards about a couple feet in front of what's going on, and then just follow that trend and cover your bases in advance of what's going on. If you're in this now, then don't panic with what you have. Rebalance where you are. Rebalance what you have and move forward from there. And if that means investing in better stocks than you were in before because the 401k wasn't managing it right, or looking at investments now, I would seriously look at real estate investments over the next 90 days with zero hesitation. You will make money on that if you're working with a good advisor almost 9 times out of 10.
Right. And I want to visit that in a whole different talk with us, because real estate is long-term and we're in a short-term situation. So I'm just want to leave people with this. When you're looking forward, remember, inference and conclusions are not facts. They are things to consider by educated people, but they are not facts in and of themselves. It doesn't, nobody's got the crystal ball. So use them to consider things, but then make decisions based upon facts, what you know to be true, and then what you think is the highest probability of possibly coming true after doing a lot of research. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Guys, I want to kind of wrap this one up, and then I want to have another conversation where we talk about that real estate market. So for now, I want to thank the viewers for tuning in and checking us out. Don't forget, hit the like, hit the subscription. We're going to have new content coming up on a regular basis. Subscribe to our channel and hit that bell for notifications when new items show up. And we have our our episodes, our full episodes will be available on Roku on the Building Solid Foundation channel. So for now, stay healthy, stay happy, help each other, and look for ways to serve your neighbors.